FLIKO! Someone said, first time recording vocals. What are must do's and don'ts? Something that'll really help you when you're recording vocals is just to know the tempo and the key before you start. And that sounds real stupid and real easy, but a lot of people get nervous, drop something in, start recording, and they don't realize for a couple seconds that you didn't set the right tempo, and then all of a sudden none of your stems can loop. You can't copy and paste things the same way. You have to reset your whole session. It becomes a real... So try to make sure you know the tempo of everything before you start, and then figure out the key. If someone's not telling you what the key of the song is, just go to a piano and figure out what the key is. If you don't know how to figure it out, what note sounds like it fits the best? That's usually the right note. So key and tempo are the two things, if you're recording vocals, I would start by knowing those every single time. And another thing, another must with recording vocals is get your latency to the smallest amount you possibly can. I don't know what program you use, but things that can increase your latency are like your buffer size. If you're using a lot of plugins that take a lot of weight from your CPU, try to use the simplest plugins you can that sound good for while you're recording. Whenever you go to the audio window in your preferences, down here, it'll show you how much latency you have. Right now, I have negative latency because I'm normally compensating for having a lot of plugins on my vocal template, whatever it is. All you guys got to do is, let's say we bring it to here. Let's bring it to no compensation. So I'm not changing anything. There's about 3 milliseconds of latency on my computer right now as it is. If I want to make it so whenever someone's singing, when someone's doing vocals, there's no it doesn't feel like there's a little delay, or every time they sing, they hear it a little late in their headphones. If you want them to hear exactly what they're singing at exactly the same second with no delay, you go to this error compensation and just try to get it as close to 0 as you can. Try to get as tiny as you can with the latency so that anytime somebody comes to record that it sounds perfect. That's a really big thing. Whenever people hear that latency, my buffer size is at 128, you should be good normally. Go to 64 if your computer can take it, if you're still having issues, but you don't want to be at 124. You don't want to be at 248. You don't want to be at a high buffer size. You're going to have a lot of latency. So make sure people are hearing exactly what they're singing. Latency is important, whether it's rapping or vocals. Make sure you know the key of the song so you can put some auto-tune in case you need to. Someone said tips for getting cleaner vocal recordings at home, plugins, setup, etc. A gate is a really good thing to have. Whenever you have a gate on something, every time there's no vocal, or let me show you how a gate works. This is how a gate works. If you're recording at home, or you're recording somewhere where there's some noise in the background, or you're recording somewhere where it's not perfectly quiet and you're trying to get a good recording, this can work for a lot of different things. A gate can help you. So what a gate does is it doesn't let anything through the gate that isn't the volume you say. So if you say, if it's not louder than this, I don't want to hear it. Every time you whisper will cut out. Only when you talk like this will you hear the vocal. It's the same idea for noise in the background. If there's a fan blowing in the back, if you set the noise gate to really low around how loud the fan is, anything louder than the fan you'll hear, anything quieter than the fan you won't hear anymore. So check this out. This is a sample I just put in here of some chimes. Now, the reason I picked these is, as you can see, some of these chimes are louder than other ones. So there's some areas that are really quiet right here, and there's some that are really loud. But let's consider this is like a vocal, and all the really loud parts are where someone's singing, and then all that other shit is like people talking in the background, or some noise, or whatever, someone chewing next to the microphone. If you do this and you put a gate on, I'm just using a stock one from Ableton, and you set the threshold is what's getting let through the gate. If it's a really low threshold, nothing really quiet, you won't hear anything really quiet. If it's a really high threshold, you'll barely hear anything. So watch. Now we're only going to hear the loudest moments. You could set it even more extreme. This is what it's actually doing. But now I'm setting a threshold to where I only want to hear the loudest things. And then you can set your release, your attack, how fast that happens, how slow it lets off after it does it. And you can make it a little more smooth so it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like you're cutting off the beginning of something or the end of something. This is just a good tool to get rid of a little bit of noise. So for me, I usually have a gate whenever I'm recording somewhere that's a little noisy, that's like set to like -40, because mostly that's like the AC, a little bit of room noise, a little bit of background rustling and stuff. -40 decibels, -43 decibels, that covers a lot of the air and a lot of the and then just my vocals coming through really low. But a gate is a really good way to get cleaner recordings. Another thing I'll tell you is something you've probably seen me do if you've ever seen a vocal that I've recorded, or I've ever shown you guys a vocal while I'm recording it or whatever, is chop out everything that's not a vocal. With the ad-libs, with the main track, if you're recording somewhere that's not perfect, make sure you don't cut off the front of a word or the end of a word or cut off something that's important, but chop out all of the time that's not something that's important information. So anything that's not someone singing, chop out the audio. If there's space in between, chop it out. Don't chop out too many of their breaths. Don't chop off the front of words. Don't cut things too short. But let's say like you recorded, so you started recording right here, and then someone said, do. Stop recording. Cut everything else except this. Cut all that audio, all that space. You don't need any of that. Just literally just save only the vocals. And then your gate, all the plugins, everything else you're doing will be even more effective, because let's say you're putting compression or you're putting something to make your vocal louder, but you didn't cut all that dead space. All that time where there's just dead space, you're compressing that room noise. You're compressing that background noise. All the bullshit that's not the person singing is getting way louder. And now for some reason your vocal feels muddy. Everything like on top of the beat feels kind of like it's dirty and it's not connecting. Cut out of the dead space, because when you have 5 ad-libs all happening on different tracks or whatever, and there's a bunch of dead space, you really notice all that. Another amazing thing, this is called the Chaotica Eyeball. They're $175. Maybe you can get one cheaper if you buy one that's used, or that you buy one on Reverb or eBay or whatever. This will help you get cleaner vocal recordings at home, JS Online. This is a big tip. So how does this work? You put the microphone inside of the eyeball. You sing into the blue part of the eyeball. You see right here how the microphone is inside of there? It creates a tunnel. So once your voice goes into the eyeball, it's only hearing what's inside of the eyeball. It's not hearing anything outside of the eyeball in the room. It's like a tiny booth. Someone saw this in the Kanye doc. You'll see this used all the time when people are recording like in a car, somewhere like that's a makeshift studio, somewhere where they're recording in not a perfect setting. Someone said, are they effective? They're actually extremely effective. I have one at the cave, just in case, but it's basically a tiny vocal booth. So it creates this filter, not only a pop filter, whenever you say S, P, T, all the things that are really harsh, it blocks off a bunch of that, a bunch of spit, a bunch of everything from getting into the signal, which already is something that helps, just having a filter in front of your microphone. So remember, gate, Chaotica Eyeball is amazing, or a similar thing that creates a tunnel around the mic, and then chopping out the dead space. So any air or anything that's not the vocal, any audio at all that's not the vocal you're recording, cut it out.